Hey guys, so judging that you read the thumbnail and the title of this video, this is news that I just received literally minutes ago, but we decided we had to make a video because it's really interesting. So, is the Up Express gonna get totally torn out? Oh my god, what's happening? Everyone's losing their minds. No. So in classic Toronto transit journalism fashion, an article came out which will be linked in the description, and it does a good job of summarizing the situation while also, you know, making it seem like things are really like extreme and tomorrow we're gonna like lose the Up Express or something. Not the case. So, background. The Up Express opened in 2015, and frankly, it might be my favorite rail service in Canada to an airport. That being said, there's currently only two, so that's not really a huge, you know, toss-up. I think rail service to airports can really take, I guess, four forms, okay? You can have like a metro service. I mean, technically you could have a light rail service, but I think that yeah, you know, light rail. Yeah, that's how I feel about light rail. But you can have a metro service, you can have a local like heavy rail service, you can have an express heavy rail service, and then you can have high-speed rail. Now, I think the order of priority should probably be something like local, express. These two are like the highest priority, and then metro, express connection, local heavy rail connection, and then high-speed rail. So Vancouver went for the metro connection with the Canada Line. Of course, since Vancouver's airport is a lot closer to the downtown, Canada Line hooks you up to downtown Vancouver in 25 minutes. Now, when the Up Express opened in 2015, the same time was met. However, the line only has a total of 2 intermediate stations versus the Canada Line having like almost 10, I think. So there's a big difference in the number of stations. Fortunately, the Up Express does connect to the Bloor-Danforth line at Bloor Street. However, unfortunately, there's not a direct pedestrian tunnel between the stations, so you have to do this kind of awkward jaunt around the block. It doesn't sound bad, but if you have bags, it's awkward. If it's raining or snowing, it just sucks, right? So ideally, since it's really one station, they'd be hooked up with a pedestrian tunnel. So this happened in 2015. Of course, also, much to the kind of upset of people along the rail corridor, the Up Express opened with diesel trains, which, in my personal opinion, is not really a big deal. The diesel trains are using Tier 4, which is like the highest environmental standard for diesel. Of course, that's not saying much, but so that's kind of the state of the Up Express. Of course, the trains used on the Up Express are also, as the article calls them, bespoke, which I think is a very nice way of putting it. Essentially, they're unique to the Up Express and the Smart Train, which is a train that operates north of San Francisco in the US, obviously. It operates kind of a regional service, not super high usage. So there's 2 systems that operate these trains. They've proven quite unreliable, yeah, it's not easily replaced with new cars of the same type. However, there are lots of high floor diesel trains of this style. And then yes, the trains are high floor, which makes them a little bit, you know, they're incompatible with the current GO system because the GO system right now uses low platforms and the Up Express uses high platforms. Now, the high platforms are probably better overall since they allow you to use trains that are a lot more like subways, where you notice that subway trains always have, you know, high floors. So there are potentially toss-up benefits to that. But that's the state of the Up Express. It's unique from the GO system. The trains are relatively small. They're unique to that system. And then we get to kind of the present. So at present, the Up Express, of course, when it opened, was not super successful. But now, it's actually quite successful. And this is actually starting to prove a bit of a problem because during peak hours, the train is standing room only. And honestly, I think if there was more capacity, i.e. more seats, it would probably be a more attractive service for people to ride on. So Metrolinx, realizing that the service is popular, which is not uncommon for Metrolinx. I mean, the Lakeshore lines are quite popular, a lot of the commuter services are super popular, so Metrolinx operates plenty of popular lines. Metrolinx has probably realized that, oof, we're not going to have enough capacity going forward. Now, why is that? Well, the Up Express already operates 3-car trains for at least half of their trains. Now, the trains can't easily be extended. Of course, you could add a fourth car and then the train would overhang the platform at Pearson and Union, but that's really not ideal. It's something that I don't think a Canadian transit agency ever wants to do, is have a selective door opening, which is where you have a car overhang the platform. You just open the doors on the part of the train that is on the platform. So with all this in mind, you also have to look at the fact that Union only has one platform, which is a little interesting. Pearson has two platforms, but since Union only has one platform, the frequency of the trains going in and out is quite limited. So right now it only operates at a 15-minute service. Now you might say, oh, 15 minutes, that's pretty good for GO, which it is. But given that the UP Express currently, and perhaps in the future too, is the only frequent service on that part of the Georgetown South Corridor, and currently on any part of the Georgetown South Corridor, it gets a lot of use, and especially in the western end of Toronto, it's potential for a lot of ridership on the line, especially if you added more stations. What the article has revealed is that Metrolinx has a potential internal plan to replace the bespoke trains with regular GO trains, or in a kind of alternate scenario, replace the current setup where the platform at Union is on the side with a center platform somewhere along the end of Union Station, and then connect it to the rest of the station with a pedestrian bridge. So I imagine that the scenario where you have the pedestrian bridge and an island platform being added at Union, that will involve some probably new electric trains that are potentially more like metro trains, which would actually be something I'd be supportive of. I think that an UP Express service operating with trains with 3 doors per car and a bit more, inward-facing seating and such could be a really good idea. Of course, it's not the premium service that the UP Express launched as, but given that this line could potentially operate a bit more like a metro or a subway, having the kind of larger trains with more doors actually makes a lot of sense, especially since the line is already quite successful without having a lot of those metro-like features. That being said, I guess it's also possible to relatively easily extend the platforms at Union, since that one would be brand new, as well as Bloor and Weston. Also, in the article, it was mentioned that Metrolinx is talking about, upgrading the guideway at Pearson, so I think it would be potentially feasible to also extend that platform, at least one more car long. That would mean that you'd have trains potentially similar to the ones operating on Line 4, which are quite significantly long subway trains, around about 100 meters long, operating on the UP Express. Very exciting stuff. The other option presented by Metrolinx is to operate the UP Express service with whatever trains it acquires for RER. Now, I'm a bit ambivalent on this, because I think a lot of people's expectation is that the trains operating on RER will be EMUs, so more like subway trains, but of a similar scale to a GO train, and they're still going to be more regional style trains, which means that they're trains that have probably 4 doors per car and relatively slow for onloading and offloading people, and they'll probably maintain a low platform. What this means is that along the line, some reconfiguration would have to happen for the trains to still operate. I think the guideway going into Pearson would probably be okay with the weight, given that EMUs are lighter than the current rolling stock operating there. However, it is going to be a bit of an issue adjusting that platform to be low floor such that it can operate with GO trains. A possible alternative would be to order trains with doors at a low level and a high level, which Caltrain has done for their electrified system. However, I don't think that's really an ideal situation, especially from an accessibility perspective, because if someone with a wheelchair gets on the lower level at any of the preceding stations to Pearson, they then have to somehow get to the upper level to get off the train, and that probably involves a janky wheelchair lift, and I don't think anyone wants that. So that's my thoughts on that. That being said, say that Pearson can be converted to a low floor station, or say that by a miracle the RER services and the new electrical trains we get on GO end up being high floor trains, there's a lot of very interesting possibilities here. It's also mentioned in the article that Metrolinx is considering operating up to 8 trains per hour to Pearson, which would be fantastic. That means a train leaving every 7 minutes approximately. What's even more great about this is that they talk about kind of a mixed service pattern. So what I see this being most likely is 4 trains per hour express to Pearson and then 4 trains per hour local, stopping at all the stops in between. This actually makes a lot of sense because the Kitchener corridor, the Georgetown South corridor, has a lot of stations likely to be added to it. St. Clair, King Liberty, Mount Dennis currently being added, Woodbine being added. So there you go, 4 more stations, plus you have Weston and Bloor, and potentially any other station I'm forgetting. With 6 stations, the travel time would be extended probably more around 40 minutes, so I think that's less than an ideal situation for an express train, but certainly for a local service that makes a ton of sense. That being said, another possible service pattern we could see is like 6 trains per hour operating the local service and 2 operating the express service. Given how fast the express service would be, I'm sure people would be willing to wait a little bit longer for it. So with all this said and done, what do I think of this plan? Well, the idea of having express and local services operating is actually awesome in my personal opinion. This reminds me a lot of what you have at Heathrow in London, where you basically have the Heathrow Connect, which I believe is being converted to Crossrail, as well as the Heathrow Express, which just operates as an express service direct to Paddington in central London. Having these 2 different service modes on one heavy rail corridor makes a lot of sense, since it's unlikely we see another heavy rail corridor going out to Pearson. Operating multiple services from it makes a ton of sense. Of course, the Georgetown South corridor is also going to be 4-tracked all the way out to the Pearson Spur, so there will be lots of capacity for local and express services. What's more exciting about this, though, is that if traditional GO trains are used, or if we end up going with high-level trains for our future RER system, well, then trains can actually through operate. What's exciting about that is you could potentially see Stouffville Line and Lakeshore Line trains through operating to Pearson. Now, I'm not sure how I feel fully about that, because that means that part of the line is a little older GO line and part of it is the really nice premium up service. But given that it seems like the up service is probably going to die, at least in name, I don't think the up name is going to last, perhaps that's okay. Anyways, I think this is really an interesting development. I've actually thought a lot about whether they would consider just kind of scrapping the way the system is set up. It only cost $400 million, which is an unfortunate thing to say, but in transit spending, $400 million is kind of peanuts. And given that a lot of that money was spent on stuff that can probably be reused to some degree, I think it's probably okay. So with all this said, what do I think the kind of future of Pearson airport travel should look like? Because I think that really tightly relates to this. So I think that the 2 train per hour direct express to Union, which would probably be about a 17-minute ride, I'm guessing. I think, okay, maybe a 20-minute ride. I think that would be one thing we definitely would want. Put it at a higher fare, perhaps even the original Up Express fare. Okay, it's probably too high, but slightly higher fare. Then you could have a local, perhaps you would still call that Up, and you would have like train sets with a few slightly less doors because it's just an express train. Then perhaps you have the Go Connect service. I'm ripping off the Heathrow Connect, but you could have a Connect service, which is a 40-minute service to downtown Toronto, but it's making all stops. Of course, this is not a model really unique to London. Lots of cities have it, but I think London is kind of the most iconic. Then beyond that, you would also have the Eglinton line connecting to Union. End of the day, it all turns Union into much more of an interesting transit hub, which is something we're definitely supportive of. Anyways, guys, we really jumped on this story last minute. We hope you enjoyed our kind of thoughts on it. As always, if you liked the video, like, subscribe to our channel, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and if you're really passionate, support us on Patreon. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.